Good morning, folks, and welcome back to Integrated Psychedelics. I hope you're doing well out there. It has been a hot minute since I've made a video for you guys, and I'm long overdue. My apologies for the lack of content on the channel here over the last couple weeks. I've been a busy boy with a lot on my plate, and here we are finally getting caught up with some content for you. So this will be a bit of an off-the-cuff video a little bit here. I did make a bit of a list to try to organize my thoughts, but this will also be kind of just me shooting from the hip, speaking from my mind, live and direct as I'm thinking about it. The basic thing I wanted to communicate to you here today is kind of a thought experiment that I've been running with myself of if I were to go back in time at the beginning of my whole healing path, knowing what I know now, what would I do differently, right? What techniques would I emphasize? What order would I put that process in? And especially that second question, what order, what's kind of the optimal order through which to go through this process. So that's what I want to kind of address here today. So, you know, if you're a beginner and you're just kind of like entering your healing journey and just discovering psychedelics and just discovering the different kind of models of therapy and, you know, personal development, self-help, or, you know, if you're someone who's just kind of maybe stuck somewhere along the way or just curious about what I would do differently knowing what I know now, this video is going to kind of be my thoughts on how to go about that and kind of the why of that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about it. And just a short piece of commentary before we go ahead and get into this. Of course, if you like this content, if you like my delivery, if you kind of seen a couple of my videos, or if you're new to the channel, please consider doing all the typical YouTube things, you know, the like, the subscribe, the comment, the thumbs up, all that kind of stuff that lets the algorithm know that I'm here, that I'm doing valuable work for you guys, and you know, share it, share the message, help it grow. So I'd appreciate that. And I'd love to just give a bit of context here. So my apologies, first of all. You know, like I said in the intro, I've been super busy lately and I've just kind of gotten behind on shooting videos. Normally I like to kind of shoot videos and kind of stack them up ahead of time and then have them ready to go for release. I kind of let that lapse, and then it just been slammed with, you know, clients and potential clients and education and practice and building a course and getting ready to move and all this stuff, right? It's been a busy time, of course, the holiday too. And so my apologies to you guys. You guys really matter to me. This channel really matters to me, and I've kind of let it lapse. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that and say that I'm doing my best to get caught up with a lot of content here for you and try to get it all lined up so that, again, we're kind of ahead of the curve here, and I've got plenty of stuff in store. And on that note, I realized that the messaging on this channel has been kind of piecemeal to this point, and I'm looking at a course that I'll be building next year and probably releasing sometime mid next year, and it's going to be profound and revolutionary. So I'll slowly be kind of adding pieces of that content here into the channel more, and I'll be working to kind of tie together little loose ends for you guys on, you know, for example, I've got a lot of questions lately about how do you regulate, or, you know, questions about how does this all fit together, or et cetera, et cetera. So I'll start to connect the dots for you guys here in the very near future with the messaging. So if you've been watching these videos and a member of the conversation here, and you're feeling like, awesome, Dave, you make interesting points, but I don't know if I see the big picture here, hang in there. I'm very mindful of that, and there will be content that kind of starts to connect all the dots here. Last thing I'll say, and then we'll go ahead and get into it here, is also another part of my channel, along with the how-tos and the specifics of, you know, regulating, healing, trauma release, you know, psychedelic work, all that kind of stuff. Along with that, and the kind of detailed step-by-step stuff, I also really feel like it's important on this channel to give you big picture understandings that connect the dots between entire systems of psychology or entire areas of life in ways that I just don't see out there. There's a lot of kind of big picture understanding of how this all fits together that I see really lacking. And so, you know, that'll be another aspect of this channel. For some of you, you may not be so interested in that, but for others of you, I think it's really going to be massively illuminating and helpful to start to see and fit together not only kind of the particulars of how do you heal yourself or how do you come to, you know, a sense of well-being in yourself, but also the bigger picture of you know, society and systemic stuff and, you know, evolutionary stuff and blah, 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 blah. So, all of that to say, tons of content on the way, more ideas than I can really capture on video. And I hope you hang in there with me, because there's really going to be some juicy content over this next year for sure. All right, with enough rambling, let's go ahead and talk about the topic for the day here, right? So again, just to remind you, what I want to share with you here is, if I was to start over, or if you're kind of starting as a beginner now, what's kind of the right sequence of steps? What are the important points to hit in terms of your healing path, in terms of your well-being? How does this all work? How does this all fit together so that you get the fastest, deepest, optimal results? So let me share my thoughts on that with you. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Let me take a little sip here. Still waking up. Let's start with just, where would you begin? What's the best place to begin in terms of your healing journey and your self-regulation journey and your personal development and spiritual growth journey, right? Would I start with psychedelics again if I had it to do over? No, I wouldn't, actually. So here's what I recommend first. And, before I say this, let me just acknowledge, if you've been in the therapy world or the psychology world or the self-help world for a while, you might be sick of this first recommendation because it's so cliche, but it is absolutely, I think, the biggest bang for your buck. I'll explain why this is so important to get right first, right? So the first thing you want to get before you start going off into the psychedelics and the crazy therapy modalities, they're all hyper-specific, just start with lifestyle. So the first place I'd start if I was starting over is looking at diet, sleep, exercise. And, I'm going to add now, those are kind of the three classic cliche talking points we hear about ad nauseum. I would also add managing dopamine addictions in the current age, right? So this would be, whether that's, eating junk food, or whether that's, video games, or whether that's porn, or just being online too much, triggering content in terms of political content in the 24/7 news feed that we live inside of now. That would be another domain. So, okay, diet, sleep, exercise, you got to optimize those first. So with diet, you want to eat fresh, you want to eat clean, right? You want to understand that, especially here in the US, but I think even around the world, poor diet choice can really dramatically impact the way you feel, right? And that can dramatically impact the capacity you have to tolerate stress, overwhelm, negative emotion. And, diet is strongly correlated with mental health, right? So we know this for a fact, right? So a poor diet will increase the inflammation in your body, which will increase, a tendency towards negative emotion or anxiety or depression. Low physical function will translate over to poor mental and emotional health. So, if you, for example, are eating something that your body, for whatever reason, has a genetic predisposition to not process well or not do well with, or you're eating, a lot of something that really just imbalances you, it's going to affect your mental and emotional health. And that, therefore, it's really hard to sort out, if what you're dealing with and what you're trying to heal is actually a mental health issue, an emotional health issue, a trauma healing issue, if you, haven't at least controlled for these inputs that are more physical in nature. In other words, if you're feeling terrible, but there's a real physical cause to that, and you haven't, leveraged fixing that first, you have no idea if the therapy you're doing is actually going to work. Because if you're doing therapy on something that's driven by, gut health or diet or something, poor sleep or something like that, they're kind of barking up the wrong tree. So the first place I'd start, just to narrow down the set of options that of, what you're working with, and so that you can clearly work on, know what you're working on, essentially. Clean up the diet, get the sleep health right. In particular, sleep, that would mean, blackout blinds like the shades I have behind me here. That would mean an eye mask while you sleep. That would mean perhaps taping your mouth so that you breathe through your nose when you sleep. Getting a good pillow, making sure you're sleeping in good position, making sure the temperature in the room is cool enough when you sleep and not, too hot. And, all of these things massively impact how well rested you are, and how well rested you are massively impacts how regulated you are, how balanced you are, how well you're functioning, the kind of heights that you're able to reach, the functioning that you're able to do throughout the week and throughout the month and year. Massive. Sleep is probably the number one bang for the buck in terms of health and well-being and lifestyle improvement. And it's the thing that a lot of us tend to overlook. We want our late nights. We want to look at a screen till we pass out in bed. We sleep in brightly lit rooms and wonder why we don't sleep well. We've got, all kinds of technology around us, et cetera, et cetera. It's really less than optimal. So please optimize your sleep. Exercise, I'm sure you've heard, the information, the data about exercise being better than SSRIs statistically for addressing depression. Exercise is fundamental to how we evolved, throughout history. It's what our bodies are built for. And by exercise, I just mean consistent movement. It doesn't have to be heavy weightlifting or brutal cardio or super intense exercise, although I find that generally that helps a lot. But even just walking regularly, getting about your house, cleaning, picking things up, just moving frequently is a huge key to well-being. So these are the lowest hanging fruit. These are the things that are the easiest to fix, that will go a long, long way towards improving your overall sense of well-being. And really, again, if you get those right, and then you still have persistent mental or emotional issues, then that's a cue or a clue that, well, it's not a lifestyle thing because I've got that sorted out, right? So it makes sense to sort that out first. And again, I would also include dopamine addictions and getting those handled too. So that means less time online, less time gaming, avoiding porn, avoiding junk food, et cetera, avoiding triggering, movies, TV, news reports, all that kind of stuff. Really being wise about your inputs in terms of media and stuff like that. Okay, so let's assume you got that covered, right? You've got your basics, sleep, diet, exercise, dopamine, addictions, kind of really well managed. That's all clear, and you're still clearly dealing with some stuff. There's still more healing to do. There's more growth. There's more work. You have patterns in yourself that you want to work on. Where to go next? From there, I would work on mindfulness practices as a major next key, and I'll explain why in a moment. But what do I mean by mindfulness practices? I mean some form of meditation. Ideally, a mindfulness meditation, but any meditative practice is going to start to help. I would also include in mindfulness somatic awareness. So this means learning how to pay attention to your body, pay attention to the sensations in your body, and how that shifts throughout the day depending on what you do, right? How does your body feel if you're out on a walk in the sun in the morning? How does your body feel when you're ruminating about that particular issue that's up for you right now? How does your body feel when you're socializing with other people? How does your body feel after certain meals you eat and certain, healthy foods or unhealthy foods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's starting to become aware of your entire self, your entire organism, both in terms of, thoughts and emotions, but also in terms of somatic body sensations, is going to be an absolutely fundamental skill that you need in place to be able to do the more deep, complex, nuanced work of, therapy, trauma healing, psychedelic work, spiritual growth, spiritual work, personal development work. They all rest on this ability to track your own experience, right? So the simple way of putting this, of course, is that if you're simply not aware of what's happening with yourself, then it becomes very hard, obviously, to change it, to improve it, to transform it, to upgrade it, to do anything with it, right? So start there. Start with mindfulness. Start with, connecting, and just, you don't have to do anything to change yourself, but just practice becoming more in touch with yourself. That's huge, right? Again, very foundational. From there, the other thing that I think is really important as a beginning, again, core skill that makes it much easier to then do therapeutic work is being able to challenge your own thinking, right? This is one that is a major blind spot for a lot of folks. A lot of my clients don't have this skill and don't realize how important it is. But essentially what I mean is, we have, and meditation will show you this, we have all kinds of thoughts and feelings and beliefs and, partial truths that will float through our awareness throughout the day with our internal monologue or our sense of self, or however you want to think of that. And for a lot of people, the tendency is to kind of take everything we think and everything we feel very literally and very personally and identify with it. Oh, well, I thought it, therefore it must really be my truth. And, sometimes if this is a negative thought or an angry thought or a fearful thought or a strange thought, then we get really on alert. Oh God, what does that mean about me that I think this or I feel this, right? This is a major place where people get stuck. And the ability, again, that's missing there is learning to be able to detach from that, being able to question and evaluate the quality and the contents of your own thoughts and your own emotions and what passes through your consciousness in a given moment, right? Because some of that could not be yours. Some of that could be just social conditioning. It could be programming from media. It could be things that your parents believed that they kind of inculcated into you while you're growing up. It could be cultural beliefs of the culture around you. It could be, things you've heard others say on social media. It could be a reactive, emotional thought that's coming from a wounded part of you that isn't clear and isn't aligned with your highest sense of well-being and ultimate truth, right? And so you want to become self-aware of these pieces and have the ability to look at these pieces of thought and simply go, is that true? Is that right? Do I agree? And be able to be a little detached and witness these things without being in reaction to all of them, right? This is super, super important when it comes to therapy, because as you're doing therapeutic work or you're, doing spiritual growth work, especially if you're doing psychedelic work, this stuff will get louder. It will get more obvious. You'll have these currents of different layers of expression and thought and feeling moving through you. And if if that's red alert, anytime you have a thought that's a little disturbing or jarring, it's going to make it really hard to heal, right? The punchline there that a lot of people don't realize, because we don't talk about it a lot in our culture, is that intrusive thoughts and kind of weird emotional thoughts and kind of dark, strange currents or anxious currents of thinking or this kind of stuff, ruminations and, judgments and petty thoughts, they happen. They're in most people's heads. That it's just a part of being a human being, but you don't have to take that stuff seriously just because it's happening inside of you. You can be aware of it and just not agree with it, not be in alignment with that, not react to that, right? So this is another huge thing that I think you kind of want to develop first, self-awareness of your own thinking, of your own emotions first, before you really progress to therapeutic work. So those would be the next steps, right? Okay, so let's assume, okay, you got the lifestyle stuff going on. You've kind of been doing the mindfulness stuff and the ability to challenge your own thinking. But clearly there's still therapeutic work to be done. There's still healing, there's still growth, there's still triggers, there's still issues. And cool, now I'm aware of them and I'm aware and I'm able to kind of witness them in myself, but they're still there. I'm still getting triggered. It's still frustrating and upsetting or overwhelming, or I'm still suffering from this, right? So what would be next from there? From there, I recommend starting to do attachment work. Okay, so this is where now that you have the capacity to be self-aware and be mindful and track your own experience, now it becomes really useful to do attachment work and start to look at understanding your own tendencies of attachment, understanding, of course, your family system and how that created these tendencies of attachment for you, understanding your parents and your grandparents' attachment styles, and understanding how you essentially project and think through this lens of perhaps an insecure, distorted, or secure attachment style, and how that shapes how you see yourself, how you see others, what you expect of the world around you, what you need from your environment and from those around you, and the quality of how things impacts you, right? So you really can't do that work if you're not able to track what's happening inside of yourself. But I would do that, right? And along with becoming self-aware of attachment is also learning how to regulate yourself through attachment upsets and through dysregulation, and start to correct this, what I would call the distorted lens that you're looking at the world through, so that it's much clearer and cleaner and more aligned, right? So I'd be doing attachment work, self-regulation, And I think concurrently with that, since that can get heavy and hard and triggering and challenging and upsetting and disappointing, and there can be grief involved and all the things, right? Concurrently, I would also encourage you to work at stretching and developing your resource states and your ability to access them. So this is everything from being able to just remember the good moments in your life and really let that resonate in your body again, to, having spiritual practices and spiritual experiences, to, getting out there and having positive experiences in life that kind of fill your cup of positive experience, whether that's socializing or hobby or travel or play of some sort, whether that's wrestling or dancing or what have you, playing a musical instrument, painting, meditating. It doesn't matter what it is, but I would strongly recommend that while you're kind of working at your attachment work and your self-regulation, that you're also working to stretch and develop your capacity for positive states, positive emotions, empowering learnings, right? And the reason for this, there's a lot of reasons for this. One is that I just think that's balanced. I think that that's, a more robust, healthy way to go about this work. But also, here's the thing. Most of us, I've said this on the channel before, are massively underdeveloped when it comes to our happiness muscle or our well-being muscle or our resources, right? It's like we are overdeveloped in ruminating and thinking about negative things. We're massively underdeveloped in accessing positive emotions, right? And so this is often where my clients get stuck. We go towards a resource state, and if I try to get them to work to develop and lean into and remember what it feels like to feel a positive resource, a lot of times the self-concept that my clients have is, I don't have any positive resource states. I don't know what it is to feel good. And quite frankly, I think that's usually a self-concept thing, that's not actually true. That's a belief we have about ourselves, right? And so we want to kind of like undo that belief and just be so clear that we're acquainted with positive experiences as part of our life that kind of undoes that belief a bit. And also, there's kind of a neurology thing here where we have what's called negativity bias in our nervous system. In other words, for survival in an evolutionary context, it makes way more sense to weight negative, threatening experiences as being more impactful and pay more attention to them, because avoiding negative experiences generally keeps you alive, right? But this means that the inverse isn't true, or the inverse is true. I'm not sure what I mean there, but the point being that positive emotion is harder for our brain to access. That if you had an equal intensity negative experience and positive experience, your brain is much more likely to ruminate and focus on the negative experience and undervalue the positive experience, right? So an example being, if you get to a compliment and an insult of about the same intensity in the same day, you're going to ruminate on the insult. You're probably going to kind of be a little dismissive of the compliment or not really let it land. So this means we need to practice building up the neurology of positive states, positive affect, positive emotion, positive resource experiences, so that it's easier for our neurology to go there, right? Because we have a tendency for that to be harder for our neurology. So I would work at that. Attachment, self-regulation, developing resource states is kind of that next level after developing mindfulness and challenging your own thinking. Okay, so where to go from there, right? So from my point of view, if you really lean into attachment healing and you really lean into self-regulation, and you get that down and you kind of really process whatever needs processing, for a lot of you, for a big chunk of you, that is going to be putting you in a place of well-being at that point. At that point, you're going to be like, I'm good. My therapeutic journey is good enough for now, and I'm feeling great, and I'm happy, and I'm a new person, and life is so much better, right? For others of you who perhaps have more intense therapeutic work to do, there's just more there, you went through more stuff, or it's deeper, it's going to just take more time. It might be that there's more work to do, but once you have that attachment healing truly in place, it's at least going to give you this foundation of safety and comfort and ability to regulate yourself that then sets you up to be able to go do the deeper, more intense work if you need to do that. So after attachment healing, which I really think should be kind of really the thing, right? What you want to do from there is perhaps do more deep, intense trauma work if need be, right? So if there's more processing you do of trauma, but again, that's going to become easier with the ability to self-regulate and the ability to have, safe attachment with yourself. Without that there, trauma work is super threatening and overwhelming and super hard and really painful. And it probably even will be with secure attachment there present in you, but that's going to buffer you a lot, essentially. Also from there, once you've done attachment work, then I would go more seriously into spiritual work. So, there's kind of a tendency, and I'm one of them here in our society, of people to seek out spiritual work before doing attachment or therapeutic work, almost as a replacement for it, or almost perhaps based a little bit on this kind of Buddhist idea of ending suffering through spiritual practice. And there's kind of this misguided notion that if I have these big, profound, mystical, spiritual experiences, that's going to heal what aches in my deep being. And in my experience, that's not really the case so much. But if you invert that and you put the attachment work first and the healing work first, then when it comes time to do the spiritual practice, there's so much more of a capacity to deal with the highs and lows of spiritual life and spiritual growth without it completely blowing you out or leaving you depressed or despondent or confused or overwhelmed. There are moments on the spiritual path that are challenging, confusing, ambiguous, kind of flat for a while, plateaus, disappointing, profoundly, overwhelmingly intense. And you need to be able to regulate yourself through that and support yourself through these ebbs and flows in your spiritual life. So spiritual work becomes so much easier when you're not projecting all of your attachment wounds and fears and needs onto your spiritual outcome, but instead it's just a practice. It's a thing you're engaging in for its own sake, for its own reward. This is also, I think, where psychedelics really come in handy and become really valuable, right? So, I'm putting psychedelics way at the end here after the attachment healing work, because then again, you have the ability to regulate yourself through, overwhelming, challenging, big experiences, which can happen on psychedelics. So if you want to do deeper work, you want to go deeper spirituality or deeper into trauma healing, you want to use psychedelics to do that. Once you have these other things in place, it's going to be so much easier to do that. So I'd recommend that. And then the other thing is, goals, self-actualization, personal development, becoming your best self, all of that makes so much more sense after attachment healing, because a lot of times when we're kind of pursuing goals and we're pursuing kind of well-being and optimizing ourselves, we're doing so perhaps unconsciously even from a place of shame, self-judgment, guilt, a sense of deficiency. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I'm not okay. I need to be better. I need to keep up with the Joneses in society, so to speak. And so if we have these wounds that are driving our personal development goals, we are going to either A, make goals that don't really suit us or fit us, or B, we're going to make goals that are exhausting and draining for us and not appropriately imbalanced to all of our needs as a human being. Or they're just inauthentic. They're not going to come from your core truth, your core values, what's really meaningful to you, right? So I think this is another major issue in our society, that a lot of self-help is coming out of a wounded sense of self, and really the thriving that personal development can offer and kind of pitches to people really comes on the back of a sense of a foundation of well-being and a foundation of secure connection to yourself and deep alignment with yourself. So I would actually put that at the end. Not, at the beginning, like a lot of people do it, but put that at the end, and it will be so much easier to get there when you can regulate, move through things, challenge your own flawed ideas, witness what's happening inside of yourself without reacting to it. Then personal growth becomes fun, interesting, engaging, beautiful, profound, challenging. It becomes kind of more of a game, more of a play. And I think that that's the better way to go here. So I hope that kind of, just to sum it up here, I hope that kind of clarifies, what might be a better sequence and a better set of ways to approach things, and perhaps what the big things are to do, So again, just to kind of recap, first I do lifestyle stuff, so diet, sleep, exercise, managing addictions, dopamine activities. Next, I get into mindfulness, so meditation, somatic awareness, and learning how to challenge your own thinking. From there, then I would get into attachment work, self-regulation, developing resource states, developing positive emotion and positive experiences in your life. Once that's really integrated and you've done some profound healing work with that, then I would go into the deep trauma work, psychedelics, spiritual work, and then, goal pursuit or self-actualization. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. This is an overview. I'll probably be making other videos that go into more depth about all this stuff, but I want to just kind of give you a big picture of what I think is kind of the right set of steps here. So let me know if this is valuable. Does this resonate? Did you have an aha moment? Do you think this is boring or cliche or not really helpful? Let me know. Leave a comment down below. I really value your input on this. And like I said, I have more content on the way here, so please stay tuned for more content soon. Much love to you all. I hope you're having a great day out there, and take care of yourselves. All right.